Good morning. We are Oxford Ethical Consulting Group and look forward to talking to Rousselot's board about the ethical, environmental, and economic problems associated with present animal-based collagen production. We will discuss the scientific and economic side of current animal-based collagen production and why switching to yeast-based collagen provides a cleaner, kinder, and more business-friendly alternative. We ask that you wait until the end to ask your questions. I pass on to my colleague, Teresa.
Great, thank you so much, Lysander. So we'd just like to start by talking a little bit about your company, Rousselot Incorporated. As I'm sure you know, Rousselot was founded in 1891 in France, based on the manufacturing of gelatin, a type of collagen, before shifting to the manufacturing of collagen as a whole. In 2014, Rousselot was bought over by Darling Ingredients and became a subsidiary, where in 2018, your company started to look into the development of new products, producing a new range of collagen products, Collatex and X-Pure being included in that. And we believe that a non-animal derived product is the next step in Rousselot's development as a company. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about your values as a company and your environmental and social governance goals. What is important to you? So your first pillar, looking at health and well-being. This is all about the consumer, and we find it incredibly admirable that Rousselot is really looking at the consumer as the center of their product. So Rousselot has a goal which we find particularly pertinent, which is to create one new health innovation each year. And this is something we believe that our yeast-based solution can help with. The second pillar of your values is looking at communities and workplaces. And once again, Rousselot has taken amazing strides with this, making sure that each of its plants is safety certified, looking after its communities. However, once again, we believe that our yeast-based solution can take this value of Rousselot's one step further. And again, we'll be discussing this with you later today. Your third value pillar, looking at responsible production, encompasses both reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, energy efficiency, looking at waste reduction, and also responsible sourcing of your carcasses for your products. And while Rousselot has also taken incredible steps with this, including the recent certification of its Angoulême plant with the ISO 50001 energy efficient certification, and making sure that all the carcasses sourced for the products comply with legal regulations. Once again, we believe, as the Oxford Ethical Consulting Group, that the yeast-based solution to collagen can take this value of Rousselot's one step further. So now looking a little bit more broadly at the collagen market as a whole and Rousselot's role within this market. In 2020, the collagen market was valued to be at around 9.1 billion US dollars. And with a compound annual growth rate of 10.6%, in 2030, the collagen market therefore stands to be up to 19.9 billion US dollars. And Rousselot, as a major player in this market, therefore stands to gain a significant amount by this growth. Looking a little bit more internationally, Darling Ingredients, of which Rousselot is a subsidiary of, is headquartered in the United States. Rousselot itself is headquartered in Europe, which currently has the biggest collagen market. However, there is limited predicted growth in this region. And this is mainly due to the fact that the stringent EU regulations means it can be quite difficult to get new products approved. However, as we can see, the Asia Pacific region is where we have the highest predicted growth in the future. And this is something we're going to be coming back to later on in the presentation, as it's an amazing opportunity for Rousselot as a company. Now, this growth in the market is coming from an increase in concern for health after the COVID-19 pandemic and the increasing aging population. And so we are seeing an uptake in the market for food supplements, other health products, skincare lines, which include collagen as a way of strengthening people's health. And my colleague Lysander will talk a little bit about this later. In terms of market revenue share, in 2022, bovine sources were accountable for 34%. And this is the fact that 34% of the collagen comes from cows and other bovine sources. There's also marine collagen and poultry sources, porcine sources, but synthetic yeast-based collagen, which is what we're going to be talking about today, plays a very, very small role in the market. And we think this is a great growth opportunity for Rousselot. But before we get onto that, I'd like to pass back to Lysander.
Thank you, Teresa. So, what is collagen and how is it presently made? Collagen is the primary component of all connective tissues in the human body. It's crucial for everything from ligaments and tendons to liver function and skin health. A lack of collagen is the primary cause of the formation of wrinkles. Supplementation can help a broad range of health effects if somebody is lacking in collagen in their diet, or for whatever reason, their body isn't adequately manufacturing it. However, the supplementation needs to be of the correct form, as there are around 28 types of collagen found in the human body, and they are very much not interchangeable. Collagen is also a precursor for gelatin. While gelatin is not specifically a form of collagen, it is made from collagen. Different types of collagen are mixed together and treated and chemically denatured in order to form the gelatinous mass. At the moment, collagen is extracted mainly from animal hides and fish skins. There is a layer of collagen beneath the skin, which is broadly considered to be a byproduct. The chemical extraction gives an impure and polluted product and has a polluting impact on the environment around it. Collagen types by these methods are rarely isolated, leading to very inefficient supplementation if somebody is lacking in a particular form, as it's only possible to provide a broad array of collagen in any supplementation technology. I now pass on to my colleagues Susie and Emma to talk about some of the problems associated with this manufacture.
Thank you, Lysander. So as Lysander mentioned earlier, my colleague Susie and I will be walking you through the myriad problems associated with the current animal-based collagen industry. I'll first touch on the legal and business aspects. I'll pass over to Susie to talk a bit more about the animal ethics side, and then I'll bring it back to the environment as well as human health. So diving into the legal aspects, there are many regulations for concentrated animal feeding operations, also known as CAFOs, and these have increased due to the considerable impact of this industry on the environment. In the US, the EPA is currently looking at increasing restrictions for large livestock farms due to the large release of methane gas and other pollutants. As many of you may know already, methane is actually 25 times as potent as carbon dioxide in trapping the heat in the atmosphere. All animal-based collagen products currently relies on animals sourced from these industrial farms. And we anticipate that these will continue to face increased restrictions. This will surmount to foreseeably increased costs for Rousselot while they are looking to obtain this animal-derived collagen. In terms of animal ethics, we also anticipate that we will see increasing legislation concerning the ethical treatment of animals, both in Europe and the US. The EU has recently shown increased concern for animals by legally classifying them as sentient beings. We can expect legal changes concerning animals and the environment to mirror those concerned with workers' rights and to have similar business impacts. A recent example of this happening is the increased legislation concerning the fur trade in Europe. Many EU countries over the past 10 years have banned or highly regulated fur farming, so much so that it is commercially not viable in many EU countries to produce fur anymore. Many fur companies did not have the ability to adapt to these changes, and their businesses have suffered significantly as a result. We anticipate that similar legislation will make it more and more difficult to source and produce animal-derived collagen at a low cost, and potentially even make it even to produce it all. Rousselot now has the ability to adapt and stay ahead of this increasing legislation. And as I've mentioned before, all of these restrictions can have a negative impact on Rousselot's bottom line. Outside of the legal reasons, being reliant on industries leaves room for error and fluctuations in the market, which can be avoided by creating your own in-house yeast-based collagen products. This means that increased protections for animals and the environment, both of which are bound to happen, may lead to increases in the prices of carcasses for collagen production, and again, could lead to a significant decrease in profits. Next, I'll pass over to my colleague Susie, who will dive more into the ethical treatment of animals as well as industry workers.
Thank you, Emma, for talking about some of the challenges this industry faces. And now let's talk about the ethical problems regarding animals. While it is good that Rousselot's ESG framework considers the responsible production of collagen, meeting the legal requirement alone is not enough, especially because companies might not have control over throughout the whole production chain. By producing animal-based collagen, Rousselot contributes to the large-scale exploitation of animals. Animal-based collagen is made from the carcasses of animals such as fish, cows, and pigs that are bought from the food industry. According to a report from the UN FAO, over 70 billion land animals are raised for food, and over 1 trillion fish are caught annually. In the face of these enormous statistics, why is it important to care how animals are treated? And why is this a huge ethical problem? Because according to the Federal National Institute of Health and the University of Oxford, animals, including fish, can feel pain. And in these industries, animals are endured to a life of suffering for our consumptions. Animals used for collagen are often confined in small spaces with little room to move and no access to sunlight or the outdoors. They're also subject to painful procedures such as castrations without painkillers. The fishing industry also employs methods that cause significant pain to fish, such as gill netting. The use of animal-based collagen, regardless if it is a byproduct or not, is still an ethical problem because it contributes to the unethical treatment of animals. In the next slide, I will explain why this is not only a problem for the animals. Exposure to animal cruelty, this problem is not only an ethical problem because of animal welfare, but also because of people working in these industries. They are exposed to huge amounts of animal cruelty and death on a daily basis, which have severe consequences to their mental health, including high levels of stress, trauma, and depression. A famous study conducted by Dr. Amy Fitzgerald from the University of Windsor in Canada concluded that communities with slaughterhouse nearby had higher rates of crimes such as rape, homicide, and assault than other communities without a slaughterhouse in their neighborhood. This just summarizes some of the problems regarding this industry. And now my colleague Emma will continue to talk about the environment.
Thank you, Susie. So this leads us to onto the ethical issues surrounding the collagen industry's impact on the environment. As we've previously described, the collagen industry is linked inherently to animal agriculture, both large-scale cattle farming as well as the industrial fishing industry. Both of these industries have widely detrimental impacts on the environment. For example, in order to produce bovine-based collagen, around 20 units of carbon dioxide are released into the atmosphere. Cattle farming itself accounts for 41% of all livestock emissions, and bovine rearing is also extremely land intensive. About 45% of the land on Earth is actually used for farming these animals. One of the main drivers of deforestation all over the globe is currently cattle farming. A recent study determined that around 80% of all of the deforestation in the Amazon is cleared for raising these animals. Additionally, much of the bovine carcasses used for collagen production are sourced from faraway places, such as China and Vietnam. So these hides need to be shipped all across the globe, amounting to additional carbon emissions. The process itself of extracting and processing bovine hides to create collagen supplements is also incredibly intensive and relies on the use of several chemicals. These alkaline and bleach-derived chemicals have a significantly negative effect on the environment, especially when they interact with waterways. Rousselot themselves have committed to responsibly managing these chemical wastes from their collagen synthesis. However, it is a very time and energy intensive process to do so. As for marine collagen production, while there is a notably smaller contribution to greenhouse gas emissions, the industrial fishing industry, from which most marine products are sourced, is also incredibly destructive for the environment. Many of these fishing boats use practices such as bottom trawling to catch wide swaths of fish species. If you're not familiar with this process, bottom trawling is a practice in which industrial fishing boats catch wide nets and drag them along the ocean floor, collecting basically everything in its path. These large nets can damage reefs and result in harmful bycatch of dolphins, sharks, and other species. In a recent report by Green Trust, bottom trawling results in more greenhouse gas emissions than the entire aviation industry. Even the wild caught label on most marine collagen products still relies on the over-harvesting and overfishing of marine species. Fishing nets also have catastrophic effects on marine pollution, as more than 40% of all ocean plastic comes from commercial fishing. Moving away from both of these industries would strengthen Rousselot's ESG commitment to responsible sourcing. Next, I'm going to talk about the different health aspects associated with the animal collagen market. So the industrial production of animal products has been linked to the emergence of and spread of diseases like COVID-19. The concentration of animals in places where animals are raised for slaughter can create a space where viruses can transfer to humans through zoonosis transmissions. After witnessing the catastrophic consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, we know that this is a very important factor to take into account. Also, these industrial farms release gases into the air, such as ammonia, that can cause significant health issues for people living nearby. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Rousselot's environmental ethics. So a 2018 University of Oxford study found that removing animal-based products from one's diet is the single most impactful thing that you can do for the environment. The same can be said for the collagen industry. The best, most sustainable way forward for the industry is to shift itself away from the highly detrimental animal agricultural industrial complex and adopt a viable, clean, yeast-based product line. Rousselot has taken several impactful stances towards environmentalism and sustainability in its ESG commitments. As my colleague Teresa mentioned earlier, the three main pillars of Rousselot's ethical commitments are responsible production and sourcing, communities and workplaces, and health and well-being. The company itself has done a significant amount of moves to support this commitment, such as streamlining their production line to use fewer greenhouse gas emissions and innovating their processes to best allocate waste, like chemical waste, through the production of collagen. However, the best way forward is to focus on the suppliers and use these same ESG goals to reduce emission and pollution by steering away from these polluting industries. So Rousselot has taken a climate forward approach to their manufacturing, and we are here to beg the question, why not take it the next step and switch to a clean, compassionate collagen? Next, I'm going to pass it back to Lysander, and he'll talk to you a little bit about the solutions for this industry.
Thank you, Emma. So the solution we're proposing is yeast-based collagen. But what is yeast-based collagen? Yeast-based collagen is collagen manufactured using a genetic modification of yeast, where the genetic code is taken from humans that codes the relevant collagen protein and implanted into yeast, which is then grown. Once the yeast has been grown in a large vat, the collagen can be easily and safely extracted. It's a technology known as recombinant DNA. It has already been used with great success to manufacturing insulin. It used to be the case that all insulin available had to be extracted from pig pancreases. However, when this technology was used on insulin, a far cleaner and cheaper product quickly became available. Now, virtually no animal-sourced insulin is available on the market. Different types of collagen must be made separately by this procedure. However, this has the advantage that harder to extract types can be made for people who have shortages. In particular, collagen type 3, which is only found in the liver, is virtually unavailable on the market at the moment, but could be manufactured by this technique. And now I'll pass on to my colleague, Teresa.
Thank you, Lysander. So the solution approach to animal-derived collagen has three elements. So firstly, solving the problems. This is looking at the business, legal, and ethical issues that my colleagues have discussed previously. The second element of this is the market incentives for shifting towards this yeast-based solution. And thirdly, we're going to look a little bit at the manufacturing practicality. So looking at solving the problems, as my colleagues Emma and Susie have mentioned previously in the presentation, shifting to yeast-based collagen and away from an animal-derived product means that we can be more cognizant of animal welfare and not contribute to the exploitation of animals. It means that we can also avoid contributing to the violation of workers' rights within the animal agriculture industry. It also means that Rousselot can take better care of the environment and really hit home on your own values and your ESG goals. And this is extended to health and well-being as well. In terms of legal and business problems that we have discussed, by shifting to yeast-based collagen, Rousselot can move with the tide and get ahead of the curve in terms of not being restricted by future regulations on greenhouse gas emissions in terms of the environment and animal welfare protection in terms of CAFOs. By manufacturing collagen from yeast in-house, it means that Rousselot is not dependent on other industries and other markets, and therefore is more secure in terms of market fluctuations. Moving on to market incentives. On the left, we can see a graph that shows the largest Muslim populations by country. Indonesia, Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh are all in the Asia-Pacific region, which, as shown previously in the presentation, is where we expect to be the highest growth in the collagen market. So by producing a product that is not animal-derived and therefore by default halal, Rousselot can really open up its market share to a whole new consumer base. On the right, we can see a graph that shows the percentage of vegetarians around the world in various different countries. India, China, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand are all in this Asia-Pacific region and all have a high percentage of vegetarians. So once again, by producing a yeast-based collagen, which is by default vegetarian, Rousselot can once again open up its market share and really take advantage of this increased booming market in this region. Thirdly, looking at manufacturing practicality. Now, there are a few firms that are currently experimenting with this yeast-based manufacturing, although they are significantly smaller players in the collagen market than Rousselot. So Jayland Biotech, who is producing their product Realogen from yeast, argues that a yeast-based collagen is a more pure product, meaning that it can have a wider range of uses. Geltor argues that a yeast-based collagen is also hyperallergenic, meaning that it is suitable for people with sensitive skins and sensitive bodies. Modern Meadow argues that it is a cheaper and less complicated method of manufacturing using yeast. So next, I'd like to pass on back to my colleague Lysander, who will talk to us a bit about costs.
Thank you, Teresa. So with regards to upfront costs, we suspect that the complete construction of a brand new plant from scratch for manufacturing yeast-based collagen will be between 40 to 100 million, depending on the scale of the operation. Initially, collagen produced by this method will be more expensive than the traditional animal-based collagen, but as the products made will be more high-end, we expect these costs to be recuperated relatively quickly. Perhaps, as Rousselot already has 11 manufacturing labs, it would be a good idea to convert one of them rather than building a new plant from scratch in order to save on some of the upfront costs. As a lot of research and development would be required in order to make this cost competitive, perhaps the research and development lab in Belgium would be a good place to start. To give an idea of how upfront costs scale in terms of one's output, each individual yeast vat would cost about $1 million each. However, we believe that this large upfront investment will be very much worth it due to the immense market shift which the collagen market is undergoing internationally. For Rousselot to remain at the head of the collagen market, it would need to stay ahead of this curve. Vegan collagen is a better product made by better meats and acceptable to better markets. It is most certainly the direction that the industry is moving, and indeed the world. So it would be a good idea for Rousselot to get ahead of the curve. It's cleaner environmentally, it's better ethically, it doesn't produce the same pollutants, and it doesn't have the same legal vulnerabilities. To use Rousselot's own tagline, the difference is clear. We are recommending that you switch to the manufacture of clean and compassionate collagen. Thank you to Rousselot's board from the Oxford Ethical Consulting Group for inviting us to speak.
Hey, thank you. If you would take down your PowerPoints now so we can see everybody. Excellent, thank you. Let us talk a little bit as board members for a second here. One thing that has me a little confused is that we are buying our bovine and cow carcasses and mining from those products. Now, is there which is of course a byproduct. Now, a lot of the cows and bovines are slaughtered for other reasons, food, usually McDonald's, et cetera, and then we buy the aftermarket. So my question is, can we really affect the production of cattle and other animals when what we are doing really is just buying something that already exists by that another company created for their own purposes?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Perhaps Emma, would you like to answer?
Yes. All right. Well, thank you for thank you, Teresa, for the passing on the question. So there are several reasons why we also are suggesting moving away from using the byproducts of the animal industry. So first and foremost, from a sort of economic perspective, buying the byproduct of the cattle industry is also supporting financially these industries to keep keeping up the industry itself. And so by moving away from using byproducts, we're putting pressure on these industries to change, because we're not paying into these industries and supporting their business by buying their byproducts, therefore making it more costly for them to continue their operations. On the legal and business side aspects as well, we do anticipate in the future there being more legal and ethical constraints on the animal industry. So for Rousselot's point of view, having more restrictions on these animal farms would make the actual buying of the actual carcasses more and more costly. So Rousselot, in order to save on costs, should move away from actually buying into the byproduct, both because they support these businesses and uphold and take away a lot of, and be able to, because we're supporting them financially, as well as increased legislation in the future and regulation in the future will make it more costly for Rousselot to actually continue to buy these byproducts.
Thank you. Other board members? Chime in.
I have a question. As you look at transitioning production moving from the animals to the yeast, what are your thoughts about, number one, how to do that? How is that going to happen, that manufacturing transition? And what steps would you take not to alienate existing customers?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. Maybe I can pass the first part of that question on to Lysander. Would you like to answer that?
Yeah, so a key thing to understand with this is that the collagen market is growing. There are going to be more customers in the future than there are at the moment. So the question isn't denying existing customers access to animal-based collagen, at least not in the near term, but making yeast-based collagen available to those customers, especially in the Asia-Pacific region, who would like it. To perform that manufacturing transition, you would probably need to build a new plant. While one could convert an existing plant in order to save on upfront costs, given that the demand for animal-based collagen isn't going to decrease in the near future, certainly not from the European and US markets, that probably wouldn't be a economically sound idea. The technology itself, recombinant DNA, is perfectly well established. As I say, it's been used for insulin production for many years with great success. So it's a perfectly scientifically plausible shift. A new plant would need to be created, possibly quite a bit of research and development to make it cheaper and more cost efficient. But it's a matter of investment, it's a matter of will. And given that there are new customers being opened up, it's not simply the alienation of existing ones. We believe that this would be an economically advantageous thing to do, even if no one who is currently consuming animal-based collagen switched over.
Given that, what are you looking at as the break even? At what year do you, given your current model, transitioning from the animals to the yeast, doing your production methods, when do you anticipate breaking even?
It depends on the scale you're going for. So there's quite a few upfront costs with this manufacture. The principal one is building a new plant, which should almost certainly need to be done. So it depends on how much of the new market you want to capture, because there's a lot of people who are, as mentioned earlier, in halal and principally vegetarian consumers opening up in the Asia Pacific region, who are going to be sizable consumers on the order of about 10 billion by 2030. I think that was the market projection we cited. So there's a lot going. It's worth noting that this product will be more expensive, at least in the near term. So when insulin was initially changed from extraction from pig pancreases to this modern production method with recombinant DNA, there was a price increase. However, since then, the price has gone down with economies of scale and cheap manufacture. So I would be very surprised if it took until 2030 before you recoup these costs. But it depends on how effectively Rousselot captures the Asia Pacific market. There's a sizable cost in making the plant. That's the main thing you're going to need to recoup. And if you go all out and try and sell really a lot of this vegan collagen, I suspect you'll do very well out of it.
Thank you.
I wanted to quickly jump in and ask a question that I think was prompted by your most recent answer. I'm intrigued by the idea of the halal and vegetarian emerging markets, but let's say that because of perhaps an unforeseen reason, or even I can give you an example, a cultural reason, the product is rejected on reasons that we haven't yet thought of. How would we transition our messaging around a new product to those markets, given that there could be a rejection there for maybe, again, a cultural reason, maybe socioeconomic, political reasons? Have you thought of that?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. I think I can take this one. While I think there is definitely a potential for products to be culturally rejected, I think one main strength, again, of a yeast-based solution is that the collagen produced is hypoallergenic. And so in a sense, it's a product that is a lot safer for a lot of people to consume. And so I think this is one strength of kind of marketing this yeast-based solution. It is a much cleaner product, and it is, as other companies have argued, it is purer. And so I think this is definitely a strength of this production that could possibly help kind of mitigate this cultural rejection of it. Because in a sense, it is the same product, it is just safer to consume. And I think that's definitely an angle that can be taken.
Judy?
Oh yeah, thank you. The presentation was quite good. I think that I understand perfectly the ethical reasons for moving to this new activity or the way we are doing the things. But for me, the most important concern is thinking about the third parties that work with us. I mean, we are going to move from a way we do the things to another one. And there are a lot of workers, a lot of small farmers that work with us that now are doing the things in a way. And if we change, they are not going to do anything. Do we have any plan to try to absorb these third parties? Are they going to be part of this transition plan? What are we going to do for them? Because if we want to be more ethical with our activity and with the market, with our consumers, we cannot forget these people. What are we going to do? How we can help them to be part of the new model of activity? Did you think about it?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question as well. It's a really, really good point to make. And I think it is important to highlight that the shift to yeast-based collagen manufacturing would not be just a total and sudden shift. So the shift in manufacturing would begin quite slowly, as my colleague Lysander mentioned, in the long term, creating a new plant. However, in the short term, focusing on research and development. Out of Rousselot's 11 plants, maybe just converting one and then matching that with the market growth. So we would not completely be isolating the current links we have with these small-scale farmers that are supplying us with carcasses, but rather building with the market. So they would not be completely isolated. But you do raise a really interesting point about in the long term, if Rousselot decided to shift to yeast-based manufacturing, how can we kind of still include these small-scale farmers? And I think that could be something that Rousselot could look into in the future, part of its ESG goals and values, perhaps looking at communities and workplaces. Maybe in these small-scale rural communities, it might be possible to maybe start some retraining programs and look at kind of training these people in a more dynamic kind of workforce. And that's something to look forward to in the future, perhaps. But in the short term, I think it's very important to note that what Oxford Ethical Consulting Group is recommending is not to completely move away from current links that we have with these suppliers, but to just shift a small amount and then grow that with the industry. I'm sure. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa. And to add on a little bit on to Teresa's wonderful point, the majority of Rousselot's partners right now are large-scale industrial fishing and bovine herding industries. So they also Rousselot also ships in, or like a lot of their cattle products from other places around the globe, because they are significantly cheaper than a lot of nearby farms. So while we're anticipating moving towards the yeast-based solutions, we're at this moment anticipating that the most impacts will actually be felt by these industrial large-scale producers and these partners. So that's primarily where we're trying to direct the biggest impact to how Rousselot is sourcing the animals for their collagen production.
Well, I will ask another one. This is clearly a case of market disruption, which is something that's so important in a crowded marketplace right now. So it's very exciting. I'm wondering, even though this is market disruption, are there any companies out there that we could benchmark, whether that not necessarily within the collagen industry, but are there other issues that other companies that are making a switch like this? Maybe it is to a vegetarian option, or maybe it's something a little bit different. Are there any companies out there we might learn from their stories?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. Emma, perhaps, would you like to answer this one?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So there are a few other competitive companies working with either yeast-based products, but as Teresa mentioned in our presentation earlier, it's on a very, very small scale. However, there is also a booming market for just vegan collagen. So as Lysander had mentioned a little bit earlier, collagen has to be currently derived from either animal-based products or these yeast-based products. So, but oftentimes when you're perusing the supermarket, you'll find different vegan collagens that are supposed to be plant-based collagens. So as we've seen, these collagen products actually aren't collagen themselves, but they're products designed to actually help the body with the production of collagen. So depending on where you are, in Europe, there are stricter laws about how we're labeling collagen and collagen-related products, but in the US primarily, these products are labeled as collagen, even though they themselves are not collagen. But as we've seen in the previous years, that this market has significantly grown. So in terms of the actual the demand for like vegan alternative bases for collagen is there.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, it looks as though your traditional method of manufacturing and your distribution to your customer base in the retailers probably is going to be similar to a cash cow. That's going to fund your growth business in the Asia Pacific region. What thoughts have you given to just starting in Asia Pacific with the vegan product and leave the UK and the US alone, and grow like the bubble? You expand, you expand, you expand, but you're not putting your core business in jeopardy. Yes, sometime down the road, when the Asia Pacific venture comes sustainable, you perhaps could start to transition. I'm just thinking, what thoughts have you given about that, and what have you seen in the marketplace with your competitors?
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a really interesting point. I think in the Asia Pacific region currently, I mean, the growth that is predicted to come there again is from, as I mentioned in the presentation, a lot of skincare and health products. So in the presentation, I mentioned Jielan Biotech, which is a Chinese company, and they have recently developed a product, Realogen, which is also a synthetic collagen. And this is what's being used in a few new Korean skincare products, which is what is kind of dominating the skincare market in the Asia Pacific region. And I think this would be a really interesting part of the market for Rousselot to kind of branch off into, as this is what's gaining popularity. Korean skincare brands are all the range, and Rousselot as a manufacturer of collagen can kind of get in contact with these skincare companies and kind of bring this new yeast-based collagen to them, and then they can really kind of brand things for the Asia Pacific region and kind of bring this forward. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I guess as a senior manager, I'm looking at this, and Lysander said that 2030 would be the break-even point if we started the transition with our manufacturing capabilities. That's a long way out, and we'd have to be really heavily capitalized to do that. So I guess I just put that out there so to minimize the risk. If our core business goes away, we can forget about Asia Pacific. I mean, we wouldn't be able to fund it. So yeah, that's why I made that point. We don't want to be put in too much jeopardy by looking at Asia Pacific and taking our eye off the ball that's paying the bills today.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's really important for Rousselot to keep in mind. And again, that's why we've kind of suggested not like abandoning animal-derived products, but kind of starting with research and development, starting with one plant, kind of shifting that towards a yeast-based solution and kind of using that to break into this new market and seeing how that goes and kind of adjusting and bringing that into the Asia Pacific region.
Right, that would mitigate the risk to some degree.
Yeah.
Hadassah or Nuria?
Yes, I had one more question on the environmental aspect, specifically with, I think, the feasibility of what sustainability looks like in the future for this. So I understand the idea of eliminating the stage one of the third-party suppliers and how that's involved with the animal industry and the enormous emissions that come from livestock production. I understand the elimination of that. What I worry about is in terms of scale, when we are at the level where we are creating new labs, new factories, new manufacturing plants and production locations, would the scale result in a larger footprint, more emissions, or even more energy intensive production? Because I would like to know, I guess, in the yeast production process, where is the cost in our energy supply? And so did we consider alternative energy sources for our labs, for our factories, for the plants in terms of solar, wind, water, or anything else? Or do we have enough data to show that in eliminating the first phase, that kind of takes care of the reduction, right? Like that substitutes one waste of energy for what could potentially on scale could be much larger.
That's really interesting. Emma, would you like to take that question?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. And you raised a really great point with understanding that like getting rid of the stage one, the actual suppliers, is a huge impact onto Rousselot's carbon footprint. However, as it currently stands, Rousselot's production of animal-based collagen, even if we removed kind of all of its suppliers, different impacts on the environment, the actual process of processing, purifying, and packaging the collagen products from these bovine hides is also incredibly resource demanding and creates a lot of waste. So this does result in quite a few carbon emissions, as well as the release of some seriously harsh chemicals like alkaline and bleach-based chemicals that oftentimes can get into waterways and have detrimental impacts around factories. So while moving away from this mode of production into yeast that are manufactured in labs, that would be a significant reduction not only of the carbon emissions associated with the industry, not only the carbon emissions associated with shipping and packaging or processing, but also on the pollutant side. So even as we scale this up, this would be a significant decrease in carbon emissions and impacts on the environment. And as you had mentioned, shifting these labs over to more sustainable, renewable sources of energy would also work to offset a lot of these costs. Rousselot, as it currently stands, uses a lot of alternative energy in terms of their manufacturing, and so by using this with the new yeast-based labs, this would have a significantly smaller impact on the environment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nuria.
Oh, yes, thank you. I have just a last questions. I would like to know if you could study the impact in our image or our reputation if we don't do this, if we don't move these transitions to a healthy way to do our activity. Did you have a study of our consumers? Are they demanding this transition? Is something that we have to do because of our consumer, or just because we have to comply with the European or the US legislation? Can we go ahead before of our competitors, or did you do any kind of study?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And I think in our presentation, we did kind of focus on the legal and business shifts and how this would kind of suggest that Rousselot does shift towards yeast-based and away from animal-based sources. And we did focus a lot about the shift in kind of consumer markets in terms of growth. So as the company grows, with this yeast-based solution, we have a wider market. But looking at our current consumers, and what they're kind of expecting from Rousselot, there is an increasing number of people who are becoming vegetarian and vegans. So this is something that Rousselot kind of should take into account when looking at this yeast-based solution. The number of vegetarians and vegans is only on the rise. And so our consumers and the other product manufacturers that we work with are kind of aiming to move and create products for this increasing market. And yeah, this is one of the market incentives, I think, for this yeast-based solution and adopting this.
And to add on to Teresa's point a little bit more, nowadays, like, consumers are demanding sustainability. They are demanding ethics from their companies. And so at this point, we need to be ahead and like taking the steps now to commit to what consumers want. As Teresa mentioned, a lot of people have been switching to veganism in order to promote sustainability, and they're also, you know, they're also using this as like a way to vote for certain legislations, et cetera. In terms of the impacts on other industries and related to sustainability and animal ethics, I mentioned in the presentation earlier that the fur industry had a significant effect based on one legislation, but also how people had perceived fur in the EU. And now it's becoming very, very, like, nearly commercially inviable for a lot of companies to actually operate within Europe. And another key example would be Blackfish. So the Blackfish, the 2014 documentary about the orcas kept at SeaWorld. After that release, the SeaWorld's profits decreased by around 87%, if I'm not mistaken, just in the next year. So once people are kind of becoming aware of issues related to sustainability and the ethical treatment of animals, they do, that this is something that they want to participate in. They want to participate in sustainable and ethical products, and that's why we're suggesting that Rousselot switch to creating a sustainable and ethical product.
One more thing to add, we're not only aiming for vegan and vegetarian people. A lot of people are choosing to consume products that avoid the exploitation of animals, even though it's not in their whole decisions. The fact that there's like the possibility, it's been shown that people would pick that possibility over the same product, but that derives from animal industry.
Okay, those are all the questions that we have as board members. So let's take our senior management. Let's take our senior management hats off, and you can take your consulting hats off. We are all back to who we are normally, and we just like to give you a little bit of feedback on your presentation. Maybe there's some information you can use there for your 10-minute or your 90-second. And so we just in the spirit of IBEC and being helpful and all, we would just like to share with you some feedback. I thought your presentation was very, very good. It was very clear that you all knew your stuff. You have all really looked into this particular topic and became very knowledgeable about it, and that definitely came through. I really appreciate the amount of work that you put in. I also thought, from a mechanical standpoint, your presentation was very good. Now, I don't tell people this, I don't tell participants this, but I actually taught a lot of public speaking. And I don't want to weird anybody out by telling other teams that ahead of time. But I just want to say to you that I thought the way you laid out your presentation, the way that you explained everything, the way that you managed your transitions between speakers and between topics were just absolutely top notch. So whoever it is that you are working with there, or maybe you all just have natural skills in it, I think that you did just a wonderful job. I was able to follow it and learn from it, and you really knew how to communicate. It's one thing to know something, it's another thing to know how to communicate it. The two are very different. And I really believe you got both of them. So thank you for that. Tom?
I would echo what Jim said. And I also would say, he made the point earlier before we began, make sure you look at the camera. And you did. You looked at the camera so we could see you. I also thought the way you handled the questions, nothing there was no shock. It was always, oh, the sky is falling. What are you going to do about that? Whoa, thank you very much for asking that question. And we have someone that can answer it. I thought that was very smooth. I really did. It's one, as Jim said, it's one thing to know the material, which you clearly do. You've obviously done a lot of homework, but it's another thing to just let it roll naturally, and nothing upset you. Everybody was calm, and everybody contributed equally. I thought that was really good. I thought the graphics also were excellent, and they were just bullet points, and each of you talked over the graphics. You weren't reading the graphics. We were looking at the graphics as you were telling your story. And I thought that was very professional. You certainly nailed the legal aspect of the presentation, in that the EU is changing, and it's nice to be doing the right thing, but we have to be doing the right thing or we're not going to survive here. And I thought that was quite the impetus with the legal analysis you did. Same thing with the ethical. You talked not only about the animals and all of the consequences that go with that, and the environment and the rainforest, but you also took time to illustrate the human cost, the cost of the workers doing the business, and some of the trauma that can create, and the downside that has for communities. I thought that was just as important as the other facts that you mentioned. The only suggestion I would have, and it's just that, I would spend a little bit more time in justifying the financial investment, and maybe talk a little bit about what we want to do starting out. What market share do we want to gain? Where do we want to do it? What will the revenue projections be for the existing business and the growth opportunity we have in Asia Pacific? So I would recommend that if you could, just be a little bit more detailed about that, because when Lysander said break even in 2030, it was like, oh, wait a minute, can we do that? And I guess my fear would have been allayed somewhat if you could say, well, yes, but here's our estimate for growth in Asia Pacific to offset any startup costs we might have. But overall, honestly, folks, it was very impressive.
Hadassah?
Yes, thank you. I'm probably going to echo lots of the same things, but I think if it's worth saying twice, it just means it's important. I think you guys did a great job. It was very easy to follow the entire story that you painted for us, and you went so in depth on each part that I really felt well informed. Like, you laid the foundation of the history, the before, then, now. But also then I was kind of blown away when you got to the solutions and the alternatives, because I could tell you had sat down and just talked about it, like both practically it seemed, but also like ideologically, right? Like, what could we do? And I really liked that part of it. You're all very well spoken. I agree that the PowerPoint was beautifully designed. We did not have some of the graphics you guys have access to nowadays when we were designing them in 2017. So I'm happy that PowerPoint has improved, or maybe you used Prezi. I don't know. It looked great. And then I really enjoyed the point about the treatment of animals, the extra time that you took to talk about the ethical implications there. They were utterly convincing to me, so much so that I didn't have other questions about why we would be able to convince our consumers this matters. You really drove it home why it did. And then, yes, I'm going through my notes now. And I will put it out there that you might not have done this, but it appeared you had all practiced this. And after doing this, I know that practice is what makes a presentation really successful. And that's what it came across as, that you all knew exactly where to go when asked a question. And then I just wanted to spend some time saying that a lot of your ideas felt very innovative. The halal and vegetarian alternative aspects, I'm going to put the word genius out there, because I felt like the idea of bringing in kind of a niche trend that for future markets of what consumers are doing now and why they're doing it. I really liked that ethical part of it. That really has like nothing to do with legal and financial, but it's so realistic to why people are deciding to changed their lifestyle choices. And then I really liked the explanation of the upfront costs, because I think often we don't think about the detractors to the ideas we put forward, but talking about them is better than ignoring them. So being able to say, being able to say a scary number like 2030, it's better than not saying a number at all. So I would definitely stick with that. And yeah, I think those were all my notes. The only point I have to echo, I think Tom's point, is that if you can tell a company why, if they don't do something, someone else will and will be more successful, and that they will have missed out on an opportunity to be the front runner or like the leading industry giant, like in a new space, I think often it plays on executives' like ambitions to be like the breakthrough somewhere in whatever industry it might be. So definitely saying, someone else will do this if you don't, it's usually effective. But yeah, overall, great job. I'm going to stop there. I could keep going, but I won't.
Thank you, Hadassah. Nuria?
Thank you. I'm not sure if I can make additional information for you. I think that I agree with Tom, Hadassah, and Jim. Your presentation was wonderful. All of you speak very well, and you know how to do presentations, how you look at the camera, how you talk to all of us, for a moment, I thought that you were talking directly just for me, so, and that's quite good, because you had all my attention during all the presentation. I wanted to hear more from you. So that's great for me. The presentation was not just wonderful because of the way you did, but for the information you provided. It was interesting. You gave the reasons from legal, ethical, from the industry. You provided a lot of information. As senior manager, I want to do this decision. I want to make the decision to move forward. Be sure about that. And just one point, I think that maybe when you explain the reasons for doing this change, for moving in this transition, try to explain that it's not just because of legislation. It's not just because of legal reasons. This is because the market, the consumers, the society in general wants to move forward, because we don't want to continue with an industry with this kind of animal cruelty, because the life changed, the industry, the society, the market changed it, and we want to do the things in other way. I think that can be another additional reason for that. Maybe for me, the mainly reason for that. But thank you very much for the presentation. It was great for me and a privilege to can hear you. And I am sure that the next step of your competition will be more than good. Thank you very much for that.
Wonderful. You obviously have impressed your judges. Do you have any questions for us that we can answer for you, and about anything? If you have any questions about the 10-minute, the 90-second, anything at all, any questions we can help you with, anything we can help you with?
No, I think we're all good, but thank you so much for all of your feedback. Yeah, it's been great to hear. We have put like a lot of work into this presentation, and we really appreciate you guys all giving us your time. So
excellent. Well, it's been absolutely a privilege to work with you, and we wish you all the best for your 10-minute and your 90-second. In August, maybe I'll run into you when I'm on the campus at Oxford, coming to visit once again. And Michael, if we would send the students off to recess, and we will keep the judges in here, and we'll talk for just a moment. Thank you so much, everyone. You make IBEC proud. Take care.
Well done, guys. Well done.